In this lesson, we'll learn about logging users in using Firebase authentication. We'll start by building a login form in our Ionic application, and then we will use the Firebase SDK to write the code to log the users in using their email and password. So here we are back inside Visual Studio Code, and the first thing I'll do is create a new page to implement the login functionality. So I'll open up the terminal, stop the development server, and type in the command to create a new page called login. Once the page is created, I'll rerun the Ionic development server using Ionic serve. In my application in the browser, I'll change the URL to point to the login page, and this will load the login page in the browser. And there we have our login page. So let's start by building the login form first, and then we'll write the code to log the users in using Firebase authentication. To build the form, we can copy the code that we have inside our Ion content in the signup page. So I'll copy all this code from here, and I'll go to my login.page.html file and paste all this content that I've just copied inside the Ion content tag for the login page. This is because the fields in the login page are going to be the same. I'll change the color of the toolbar using the color attribute to danger, and I'll also change the title, and finally I'll create a button after the Ion list using the Ion button component. The text on the button is going to be login, and finally I'll bind the click event of this button to a function. Let's call this function as login. So now that we have the form and the button ready, let's go to our login.page.ts file and create these properties with the name email and password, and also implement the login function. So inside the login.page.ts, inside the login page class, we'll create a property called email, which will be of the type string, and similarly we'll create one for the password, which will also be of the type string. Next, we'll implement the login function, and inside this function we'll be using the Firebase SDK. So let's import that as well. Now that we have the Firebase SDK imported, we can use it to log the users in. So here we'll start by typing in firebase.auth, and of all these functions, the function that we want to use is sign in with email and password. This function takes in two arguments, the user's email and the user's password, and we can execute the promise on this function. So in the then callback, we get the same object as response that we get when a new user is signed up. So for now, we'll just log it to the console, and if the then callback is executed, it means that the user is successfully logged into the application, which confirms that their email and password was correct. In case an error occurs, we can handle that using the catch block. For now, we can log the error to the console as well. Let's save that and test this out in the browser. So I'll clear out the console first, and I'll start by inputting an email and a password. The password for this account s@a.com is a different one than what I've entered, so I should probably get an error. I'll hit on the login button, and I get this error in the browser's console with the message the password is invalid or the user does not have a password. So it means that my password is wrong. Let's try logging in with the correct password. I'll hit on the login button again, and this time I get the same object that we got when we signed a new user up using Firebase authentication. This object has a user property which further contains all the information about the user that is currently logged in. You can also see that I get the same UID object that can be used to uniquely identify a user. And this is how you can log users into your application. So now that you know how you can log the users into your application using their email and password using Firebase authentication, in the next video we'll learn how we can check if a user is already logged into the application or not.